Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Ancient Keys Live tonight. We are here to talk about the transformation that Dana and I have had doing our spirit-driven healing. So let me invite her in. So yeah, it's going to be a cool talk tonight. We have so many notes,
Same here.
so many things to go over. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think we should just start with what is spirit-driven healing?
Absolutely.
Because yeah. So this is for us, this journey, we just figured this out, guys, that we were we know it's been years that we've been working together, but actually how long has it been? And we started in July 2021, so quite a few years. That literally, just to give people a reminder, if you haven't watched our other lives, Dana and I have been doing this almost every single week since July 2021. We are dedicated. So,
That
yeah.
just blows my mind. There's 52 weeks in a year, right? We think about how many times and sometimes more than once a week,
Oh,
right? And it's just
yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. That's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yes, for sure. But yeah, so for us, it spirit-driven healing is really how we started and we continue. We are now serving clients doing this. It's healing with spirit. So Dana and I have both gone, and tried to do traditional therapy to heal from trauma and pain, and it just wasn't working. And it just it just got to a point where nobody was understanding what we were going
Yeah.
through and how we were working, and how we were trying to heal. And as oracles and psychics, we decided, why don't we just try spirit?
Yeah.
you
And,
know
and and that's really the missing piece of the puzzle there. When you see the world through an
mm,
intuitive lens, your healing has to happen through an intuitive lens, right? Like you can't,
mm,
and even for people who accept it, there's a difference between accepting it and there's embracing it, embodying it, and
mm,
yeah, yeah, it's important.
mm. Yeah, so we just decided, um let's see what spirit has to say. And they had quite a bit to say. Here
Yeah,
we are 3 years later,
yeah,
still doing it, and it's helped us so incredibly much. I mean, it's just been amazing.
yeah.
um
Yeah. Well, spirit-driven healing is really, to your point, it's the healing with spirit, but it's also opening the door to receive that divine guidance and support, like on a regular
mhm,
basis, like these aren't like isolated experiences you're having.
mhm.
Like this is the way that you're
Yeah.
really choosing to move forward with your life. It's the blueprint that you're choosing to use, I guess, is really, um,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. And earlier we were talking about what does this look like? Like what does spirit-driven healing look like, right? And we're healing from pain or trauma or grief or whatever it is with spirit, but that brings up shadow work. And at some point we had to start looking at ourselves and being like, oh, how can I, okay, yeah, maybe things were done to us, right, that were really terrible, and we're healing from that. But then at the same time, where spirit is sending us triggers, and it's okay, so now I'm healing from my own self. Like, why do I have this pattern? Why am I acting this way? Why do I have this behavior? And things. So yeah, at some point it became a lot of shadow work.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And shadow work is really allowing you to see that too, that all of these things that you've experienced that you didn't have control over happen, but then to keep yourself in the pattern, it helps you realize that you're also part of the problem too. And it lets you see where you have to do
Mm-hmm.
your work, to sort of end that cycle. It
Mm-hmm.
allows you to bring the awareness into it. I think that's something we always talk about is shadow work
Yes.
digs up your
Mm-hmm.
shadows, but then the
Mm-hmm.
actually healing part of it is bringing awareness, understanding how and why you've chosen to do these things, and then the
Mm-hmm.
next step would be that integration, our favorite thing to talk
Mm-hmm.
about because it's so
Oh
important.
yes.
Is how do you integrate this, and you can do
Yeah.
that shadow work and that awareness and that integration with spirit,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me personally, it's like having the awareness of like, why is it happening for me instead of to me?
Hmm.
Because the victim mentality is it's happening to me, which
Yeah.
at some point it did. But now it's like, oh, well, why is this happening for me?
Hmm.
What can I get out of what's the silver lining?
Yeah. Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. That's so key. And I absolutely loved it when you mentioned it earlier because I think it's so important. And I think it's like
Mm-hmm.
a shift and it's one of those things like we're talking about that transformation today and the impact of spirit driven healing. And that shift is huge. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's like taking your perspective and really allowing you to kind of remove your blinders or your goggles and really see things. For
Mm-hmm.
what they are. And the flip side of that would be, or the continuation of that would be that because you're able to do that, you're able to tap into seeing the world in a sort of multi-dimensional awareness. So you realize
Mm-hmm.
the bigger picture. So there may be this initial trauma that happened in childhood or whenever it happened to someone, and we spend
Mm-hmm.
our adult lives trying to, recover from it and not be held captive to it any longer or whatever the situation may be. But we also have to look at the fact that everything that we are right now goes into past lives. It goes into
Mm-hmm.
multidimensional awareness. It goes
Oh yeah.
into encounters that we're still learning and I think in the spiritual community to put definitions on because they're not definable
Oh
really,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, there's so much of like, that's something that brings me to like another point that like, um, I had a note on it. Where did it go? I don't know. We'll find it. Oh, here, open. Like we were talking about this earlier, like how this journey has like I think you and I, like I said earlier, we're very liberal to begin with, but it
mhm.
opened us up in such a way that it's very humbling because you start to see how small you are in the universe and how just being like in contact with galactic beings or different energies, and like you start to open up and you start to see like, oh, okay, there's much more to this than I thought.
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. How big and small we are. We are the universe, but we're also just a speck
Yeah,
in it, right?
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah. Um, Definitely. I totally was gonna say something and it just went out. It just went out my head. Oh
That's
well,
okay.
it'll come back up. Um, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many things. I mean, let's see. We have like I have a list here of like, for one, it's made me feel more free. Um, I don't feel so like tense and so like, shriveled
Mhm.
up. Like my energy, like, and even like, so I've been traveling for a few years, and like I've been going back to New York, and just to see like friends and coworkers and stuff. And people would say to me like, your energy just feels so much more open.
Mhm.
You're not so closed off anymore.
Yeah.
And to me, that's like one of the best compliments. And not only to hear it, but to really feel it. Like, oh yeah, like I do feel more free, and
Mhm.
safe, and protected by spirit. And yeah.
Yeah. Well, really, I think that brings us to one of the big things I think we talk about a lot is you're learning how to trust, right? Because you're trusting
Mm-hmm.
that life is going to
Mm-hmm.
provide you provide for you, but you're also trusting that
Mm-hmm.
that life is going to keep you safe, it's going to keep you on your path,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to, bring you the things that you need to move forward, and what was we were
Mm-hmm.
saying earlier, real trust, not bullshit trust, right? Like it's like the real trust, like, being
Yeah.
able to allow yourself to be put into situations where you really you're like, oh, you know what, everything is okay. The thing I was afraid of happening happened, and it's okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I think that that's one of the beauty of, being on this sort of like spirit, whether we call it spirit driven healing or we say a spiritual path or awakening or ascension, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you really lean into it and you really listen to it and you kind of co-create with spirit, what are some of the things that start happening? And before we might think these things happen.
Okay, let's try this again.
Here we are,
Okay.
right?
Yes. I
Yeah.
don't I don't remember what we were saying, but it's
Uh,
okay. We'll figure it out.
what were we saying? Yes.
So many things.
I don't remember either. Um, I know we were talking
Oh,
about trust, real trust
yes.
versus not
Yes.
real trust.
You were talking about trust. Yeah. That I remember.
Yeah. I don't remember the point that I was trying to make in that moment, but
Well,
let's just kind of continue with it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I I know that I was going to say when you were done, I was going to talk about like off that topic. Um, so for me personally, something that I have cultivated with spirit on this journey, definitely is trust, but trusting so deeply that I have felt okay to take very big risks. Um, and I wrote down, and I think it's important to say this word, but I felt empowered and supported to take those risks. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something really big. Because before I started this journey, I would not have done the things that I'm doing now. And people think I'm crazy sometimes, and I don't care anymore. But but yeah, I think it's like such a deep trust in spirit that they not only will support you in what you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
but guide you to
Yeah.
do certain
Yeah.
things, you
Yeah.
know?
And that once you start that vocabulary of communication with them, that you can follow the breadcrumbs and the hits and the synchronicities, and you're able to
Mm,
understand the yeses or nos to what you're supposed to do in a deeper way. Um,
mhm,
but freedom, yeah, the sense of liberation, I think is a
mhm,
huge one. You were talking earlier about adventure, right? About the ability to
yes.
have the invention, and that connection with your inner child is something that when you do spirit driven healing that you can really
Mhm,
embrace, and being able to realize too, you can have adventures large and small, right? You can have these huge wonderful adventures where you're
yeah.
traveling around the world, or they can be these little adventures where you're able to see it within a walk in the park, or
Mhm,
sitting next to the window. It's a
mhm,
really liberation, and something that we were talking about
very
with
true.
with heart-centered living, right?
Mhm,
Liberation is really stepping into awareness of yourself and awareness of being present in your heart, right? And that's
mhm,
something that we were, sort of,
yeah.
I think that connection to being heart-centered and being able to,
Mhm,
sort of move forward with that.
mhm.
Um,
And
yeah.
like for me, that's like really, it shifted my perspective of what is really important in life. Like
Mm-hmm.
you start to really see like some of the things that you really held, aren't they don't even resonate on me anymore.
Yeah.
They're just like
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
I'm taking this risk because this is more important to my happiness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And you start to realize things where, we talk about, the sort of, you know, what happens to you as a result of this. And I think that you start to realize little things like it's okay if someone doesn't like me because I've done
Hmm.
this, or it's okay if
Hmm.
someone doesn't understand my choices. Like you don't have to give yourself permission to do things because you're embracing an authenticity that you
Yeah.
I think is very interesting.
Yeah.
And like what are some of the things that that we've mastered on on this like 3+ year journey of journeying every week, really, and then beginning to work with clients, like what are some of the things we've been able to give ourselves, self-acceptance, right? That's huge. We
Yeah.
just talked about that. Self-awareness, the ability to sort of see the good and the bad in ourselves,
Yeah.
um, and that brings like a self-confidence in, right? Ability to
Mm-hmm.
trust the self. That's really
Mm-hmm.
important. Um,
Maturity,
yeah, yeah.
emotional maturity, and
hmm
um, yeah, and self-reflection.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Because we're still not perfect.
No, no. And we never are, and that's,
Yeah.
like, what's the imperfectly perfect, right? The
Perfectly
imperfect.
imperfect.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that working with spirit on healing also allows yourself to go within for answers in a way that's very
Mm-hmm.
curious, because
Yeah.
it's like you find your own answers inside and you find spirit inside of your own body. So there's this eternal strength that steps forward when you connect with your
Mm-hmm.
intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you can feel yes or no, like where the yes is in your body and where the no is,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, you know, and that
Mm-hmm.
we talked a little bit about the spiritual path already, right? Where we're talking about the ability to get divine guidance and support by healing with spirit. And who is that from? From deceased loved ones, right? They've stepped forward for us.
Yeah.
Guides,
Ancestors.
really, ancestors, cultivating like
Mm-hmm.
really personal relationship with guides,
Mm-hmm.
light beings. For us, that whole the journey with Mary Magdalene right now,
Oh, yeah.
she wasn't going to have stepped forward if we didn't, like
Mm-hmm.
embark on this journey. We really opened that door for that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the ability, I think, to see things beyond like the linear concepts of time and space is really super
Mm-hmm.
important.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
that's that sort of ascension and awakening I think everyone talks about. I still think we
Mm-hmm.
need a new word for it though.
We do. I'm
Yeah, the
so tired of using, oh, ascension. I
ascension,
mean,
ascension, yeah.
the concept is so great, but yeah, I think it's just been overused.
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder if it's more of a remembering than anything,
Well,
like, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I I remember I had this whole idea for an Instagram reel, but I was having this conversation with, I think it was my husband or someone, but it's this idea that we never really learn. We only remember. We're never learning. We're just remembering everything because we, as an eternal soul, we know everything.
hmm
We just come to this existence forgetting.
hmm Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, yeah. And as we remember, really, we have the ability to let like things come and go out of our lives in a different way, I think. There seems to be, the
Mm-hmm.
more awareness you have, we talked about this earlier, like we realize how large and small we are, so we're able to, I think it frees us up to recall things in a way that, because the weight isn't the same with them.
Mm-hmm.
When you're,
Mm-hmm.
coming from a place of
Yeah.
trauma, like everything has weight to it, right? Like
Yeah.
everything's
Right. Yeah.
heavy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're able to like let things go a little easier, you know. And
hmm
and that brings me, I don't think we talked about this yet, to like the triggers, you know, like so Dana and I took this course and the guy said it perfectly, to let the triggers be your guides. And that's literally what we're doing, is just like
Yeah.
when we're triggered, we're saying where, instead of, I mean, again, we're not perfect, right? Like sometimes we still react, but it's just taking that step back and being like, where is this coming from?
hmm
And sometimes it's not even this lifetime.
Yeah.
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
and yeah.
That's that shadow work, like that's,
Mhm.
that big, I think shadow work's less big than it was maybe 5 years ago, but I think it's like saying, like if we let the triggers be the guide, then, we're really stepping into it, really
Mhm.
owning it, um,
Yeah.
and we're really allowing ourselves to do the emotional healing. So we're not like, we don't react like we used to things, or if
Mhm.
we do, it's a shorter cut around time. We're able
Mhm.
to feel it and sit with it.
Yeah.
Um, we're able to, when we receive and give messages from spirit, we're able to like hold space for them in a different way, because we can like see,
Mhm.
okay, you get these messages. I think when you're on the healing journey, we talked about traditional therapy before and like why it didn't gel, but there's this objectiveness that is really interesting that comes from spirit, because they hit
Mhm.
the nail on the head if you're
Yep.
really listening in a really
Yeah.
interesting way. um
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
because they can see the whole picture.
Mhm.
And again, not just in this lifetime. They can see the whole picture.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, like
Yeah.
nobody else can do that for you or
Mm-mm.
for us. Like it just yeah, and it's yeah.
Yeah, it brings clarity. It brings a lot of clarity,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
um and
Hmm.
I think something else too, that class that you mentioned us taking,
Hmm.
another thing that Matt said was that clarity comes through action, right? So
Hmm.
the action of connecting with spirit really brings through a clarity to the sort of bigger picture,
Hmm.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
uh,
I don't know about you, Dana, but I just thought of this like so for sure, like what you're saying, like it definitely brings clarity, right? For me, for you, for us together, because we do it together. But I think it also brings clarity to like how you view other people's reactions and other people's behaviors. Like you start to see the patterns, and you start to see, oh, they're acting this way because of this, and
mm-hmm.
like it just things just start to make more sense.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's like you take everything you learned in traditional therapy and you can see it from this psychological perspective,
Mhm.
but then when you apply the spiritual on top of that, like everything really comes together. Like it
Mhm.
really truly comes together. And you start to
Mhm.
understand people and you understand, I think, yeah, why, not so much why, but you begin to understand the needs behind everything,
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, you know,
Mhm.
because you're living in your heart and you're allowed to like kind
Mhm.
of connect with it from a heartfelt spot.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that, like we're talking like a lot about all of the things it's giving us, and I feel like we still didn't touch on everything either, maybe, but like I think like when we talk about like what are some like transformational almost tips and tricks for people, right? Or
Mhm.
like what are some like of the things that are really, like how do you make that commitment to transformation from a spiritual perspective? Like, what are the things that someone would be doing?
Mhm.
You know?
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
Well, I
yeah.
think I think really quick too, like something really quick. I want to say something because, like we spoke about in the beginning, you and I have been doing this every single week since July 2021.
Yeah.
So if that's not commitment, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
But really, really being and it's not like being committed to spirit or um, anything else, but it's being committed to yourself, you know, to personal growth, to the healing,
Mm-hmm.
to really being committed to make yourself a better person.
Yep.
And one thing that we didn't talk about is something that it's my favorite phrase. I don't remember where it came from, but it's called compassionate curiosity. And I think that's kind of been like maybe subconscious foundation for Dana and I
Mm-hmm.
because one, we're very curious, and two, we have developed this really deep sense of compassion, not only for ourselves but for each other. and for others when we do this healing, because now we get it. Now we're like, oh, okay, you're going through that. I get it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, I think, why we're so good with working with people, is because we didn't read this in a textbook. We lived it. We've been living it, and we continue to live it.
Well, that was my point. Like, we haven't stopped living it, you know, and then that's the thing.
Right.
Like, there's really no stop to it, because there's just so much to, when the curiosity comes through, you know, the healing is an eternal thing, right? You know, but it's always a curiosity, right? Like, there's so much to know and so many different things. And you realize too that when you do spirit-driven healing, we can talk about trauma, right? We can talk about helping people recover from trauma, from grief, from abuse, from holding space for those really serious things, and understanding that because we've been through those things as well. But it can also be, you know, spirit-driven healing in the sense of learning how to ask for all things we need and want and deserve out of our lives, right? Like asking for spirit's help with the mundane, with things like job transitions and relationships, you know, improving and just connecting in all sorts of ways.
You know, one thing I wanna say too, really quick, because for people watching this, like, and it really, like, we're still kind of integrating this, is like, throughout this journey, like, we have healed tremendously, we have transformed tremendously, and like Dina said, like, we're still going. But something that spirit keeps saying to us, and I think it's really important for people to know, is like, even though it may sound like, okay, like if you're going to therapy and it's like this big heavy thing, you know, but there are still ways to have fun with it. And that brings back to like that adventure part, right? But just, and the curiosity, it's just like having fun with it, and just like, it doesn't need to be so heavy. It doesn't need to be so serious all the time. You know, of course there are parts that are going to be, but
well, that was a big, constant, continuous message for us from Spirit since the beginning, especially in the beginning. I feel like, you know, we're getting reminders on it here and there, but I think we've learned how to do it better. And, you know, we're talking about the inner child work, about the, you know, sense of playfulness. And really, there's some spirits you're going to connect with that bring that out in you. Spirit has a wicked sense of humor, like, you know, you know, like like, you know, connecting with elementals is another great way to bring that sort of joy out. You know, the fairy energy.
The fairies, I have a joy fairy. Love her.
You know, so I mean, I think when we talk about like what is that commitment to transformation from a spiritual perspective, we talked about the compassion, we talked about the ability to be playful, right? About being open, right? So even something like working with fairies, on the beginning of my spiritual journey, I was not open to that. I was like, fairies, you know? But then, you know what? They showed up in a big way. So you have to be able to be open, to be radically open in this journey, which is the ability to embrace change, right? You can't be a stagnant. You can't allow yourself to remain stagnant. Surrendering.
I'm surprised it took us this long to say surrender.
I know, right? Usually it's trust and surrender, but
definitely surrender.
Something I think that is really helps me with surrender, and it kind of dawned on it when I was making notes with this, is the ability to take what resonates and leave what doesn't. To be able to see that nothing has to come in a full package, including the spiritual journey. Like, you don't have to commit to a fullness of belief in anything. You just have to find like what floats your boat. What moves you, what allows you to have the insights. And I was really thinking about that.
That's a good one.
Because I've had one or two people ask me recently, oh, are you like Wiccan? I'm like, no. And then I realized, but no, I do have a lot of things that people would identify with that, you know. But I also, and that made me really think about how you can take what works for you and put it together in this really unique and fun way. I think we talked about the commitment to personal growth and healing, being heart-based.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Oh, one thing we didn't touch on yet is just by doing this journey, we have found our purpose. I mean, our purpose is obviously to do this for others and serve you.
yeah, yeah.
But also we have other things in life that is just like, okay, like I think it's kind of unavoidable when you do it because
Mm-hmm.
it really just it's coming back to that clarity.
Yeah.
It really clarifies what's important, what's not, and from that, yeah, the purpose really comes in.
Purpose being purpose driven, totally.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what else? Commitment to transformation. Oh, and how do we be purpose driven? I think is something too. Like it all comes back, it all ties together in a full circle, right? Like, because then you start
Mm-hmm.
answering with the same questions. But I think that too, like when you work with spirit, it shows you that consistent, committed, imperfect action, right? That
Mm-hmm.
you can still be like, nothing has to be perfect in this whole journey. Like you don't
Right.
need to know all of the information connected to the situation, or
Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
um,
And you're not striving for perfection. It's striving just more for understanding.
mhm,
Like
yeah,
why is this
yeah,
happening?
yeah,
Or
yeah. And what are the hows with it? Like, how do you connect with spirit? Like, how do we do spiritually
mm,
heal, do spirit driven healing, right? When we work,
mm,
we open a shamanic, basically a circle, and we're
mm,
journeying. We're working shamanically with people, right?
mm,
Um, and I think when we work shamanically and people allow themselves, others to do, they're working from this part of their brain that isn't linear and isn't, so
mm,
you're able
mm,
to access this wealth of information
mm,
that you couldn't if you try to sit down and solve the problem from a list,
mm,
or like,
mm. It's not gonna
like,
happen.
here's the 5 things to do in shadow work. Let's check them off and create the
Nope.
box and do the spreadsheet and all of that. Like, yeah, there's
Mm-hmm.
benefit to that. There's benefits to those things, but
Mm-hmm.
it's like only solving things using your mental capacity, but ignoring the spiritual part of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And what are some other
You know,
spirit-driven tools?
well,
Yeah,
one comment I just want to make on that
yeah,
I think is curious is that so like you and I have had many journeys where we have sat down and we've said to spirit, we want to work on this XYZ, whatever it is. And we open the circle, we go in, we start the journey, and we're like, huh, that's not what I expected.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I think that's the beautiful part about working with spirit is because, like Dana said, the lists are great and doing all that stuff is great, but then at some point, there's something that spirit is going to see that fits into that, and maybe you need to look at that first, but you're not aware of it. And that has happened in many journeys where
yeah.
we just like we go on this journey and we're like, that is totally not what I expected, but we trust enough that we know that spirit heard our question and they gave us exactly what we needed.
Well, that's almost like where the whole really, really connecting with the divine masculine and feminine energy. I mean, that's really how that whole journey spurred. Like, yes, we
Mm-hmm.
went in and we were intentional about doing that sort of connection, but
Mm-hmm.
um, it kind of came to us from really allowing spirit to sort of take the rein or point us in a direction we might have not otherwise have seen, and then we would have missed out on all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
You know, you just sorry, thoughts are just popping into my head tonight. I'm really tired, so they're just coming. But um, I think also like just a point that to make here is like if also had we not been open, right? And we started working with the divine feminine, Now, I don't remember if we started calling on Mary Magdalene or if she just came. I think she just started coming
She
through.
came, and because she came, and we were like, wow, then it was intentional.
Then
Yeah.
it was intentional, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But had we not been open, because I'm not religious in that way. I mean, yes, I know of her, but had I not been open, we would not have unlocked that door and started down this incredibly beautiful
Yeah.
road with her.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's something
Yeah.
really amazing.
And that was a lesson for me, I think, some of the stuff I went through. I was almost, I wouldn't say anti, but I was just like, okay, we're working with her, like I really had to
Mm-hmm.
I really had to open my heart up for that one, and I'm really glad I did because it
Mm-hmm.
resonated, and it didn't have to fit into
Yeah.
a certain box, um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah, but that ability to, do spirit-driven healing, through shamanic journeying path is really important, whether it's by yourself, because we both do solo journeys in addition to
Mm-hmm.
journeying together,
Yeah.
whether it's working in a group capacity,
Mm-hmm.
or doing what we do when we work with our clients, and what I think there is so much potential in is to journey in small groups to really do
Mm-hmm.
this together and to hold that space for each other,
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because that is always really beautiful because there's always, no matter where the people are or where they're coming from or their backgrounds or what they went through, there's always a weird synchronicity that happens where it's like the energy of the group is always like whatever needs to heal is always coming through.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Absolutely.
and to be able to hold that space, yeah, for other people and do this is incredible.
Yeah, it's really magical, and you can really see, it's I don't know, just a lot of like heart-based living in it, and it just has
Hmm.
a lot of a lot of
Hmm.
connection,
Yeah.
and when you're doing that shamanic journey, you're allowing yourself to develop your own intuition, your own, sort
Hmm.
of relationship with your own intuition with your clairs, finding out like what was it our mentor said your superpower is.
Yes, our
um,
superpowers.
yeah. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's opening your third eye, right? Like really like being able to,
Hmm.
utilize that.
Yeah.
Um, like we were talking about earlier before we got on the call, the energy work, chakra work, Reiki
Hmm.
work, uh, one of the other many modalities. Automatic writing, I think, is a big one
Hmm.
too.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
And then
Yeah. What else?
we're talking about some of the things that we think of that may be a little less spirit driven, but they really are, like, placing your hand on your heart, or you mentioned the breath, right? Like how important
Hmm.
that is.
Yeah, doing breath work and like for me too, it's like okay, like doing the breath work intentionally, but even like as simple as like when you're feeling triggered, like I put my hand up here on my heart chakra, on my upper heart,
Mm-hmm.
and just breathing and
Yeah.
just trusting that okay, we're gonna get through this. I am not alone, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
I think if everyone took time to put their hand on their heart and breathe during the day, I think the world would be a really different place, right? But um, yeah, time
Hmm.
in nature.
Hmm. Grounding, yeah, nature, big,
Yeah,
huge, huge.
absolutely. Um,
Something for me, that I know you've done and you like also is doing rape. It's a shamanic. For those of you that don't know, it's just I'll give you a really quick. It's just a tobacco medicine that's used in
mm-hmm,
indigenous tribes that you blow up your nose and it clears. It's not hallucinogenic, but it just clears the mind. But that is really grounding, and it's really really helped me.
mm-hmm.
Um, physically and spiritually.
Yeah, it's surprisingly powerful for something that isn't mind altering. I was not prepared for the experience I had when I did it, and I did it for the first time with you, so it was just like,
Mm-hmm.
wow.
Yeah.
And there certainly is also, a tremendous spot for using ayahuasca, which you do with people,
Mm-hmm.
but also mushrooms can, all of those things have a
Yeah.
time and space if they're done responsibly and with intent and you're preparing for them.
Yeah.
But I would say that is a solution that's probably more on the, maybe not for everyone, although I do think it is for everyone, but really
Mm-hmm.
just making sure someone's in the right space for it and they're
Yeah.
doing the work and they're, making sure they're
Mm-hmm.
preparing their bodies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For me, actually, having done it and being on this journey, I can kind of see that, doing what we do, right? Working with spirit and healing kind of, it put me on this, I've always wanted to do ayahuasca since I've learned about it, which was way before we started doing the shamanic journey. But I think it just encouraged me more. As I did the spirit driven healing, I was like, okay, I felt more called to it, to do the plant medicine. And I think that's like an interesting transition for people to start slowly.
yeah.
And then once you keep going and going, okay, then you can dive into that and, you know,
Yeah,
um,
absolutely. Because you're really just taking these experiences you may have over weeks or months and condensing it into like a crash course of
a
like
few hours.
yeah. So you're just yeah. It's like a race versus a leisurely drive or something like
Hmm.
that somewhere. Yeah. Um.
Yeah. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely good. Yeah. Um, Meditating
Yeah. Oh, that's a big one.
and
That's a really big
and
one.
simple meditation. It doesn't have to be complicated.
No. Oh my goodness, no. Yeah, people think it's amazing that the narratives people have constructed around what they think meditation is and how they can't do it. Like,
It's really
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, oh, so you want to sit there for an hour and have nothing come into your head? Like, no, like I don't understand. That's not gonna happen.
Unrealistic, unrealistic expectations.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Hmm.
there's so many different types of meditation. Like sometimes all you can do is a guided one. Sometimes that's as good as it's going to get and that's what you need.
Hmm.
And, you can do
Yeah.
1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes,
Hmm.
as long as you want.
Yeah.
um, yeah. Active meditation is something that I think it took me a couple years to really get to, but that's like a super cool thing
Hmm.
too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like taking a walk in the park and, you know, without your phone, without headphones, just,
Yeah. Mhm.
um, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Something recently Spirit was telling us to do in a journey is to go sit under a tree with our back against a
Mm.
tree and to meditate.
Yeah.
And you did it like the next day. You were like all on that. You had that the next day, and it took me for whatever reason. I think it took me 3 days to get to that tree.
It's okay.
But when I did, it was good and it was important and
Mm.
it came at the right time because I think it was right before a situation that I maybe might have reacted to differently than if I hadn't taken that time to
Mm.
meditate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, that was really, so that felt really good.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, but I think, yeah,
And
I'm
I
sorry,
think that's a great example of, when we talk about spirit driven healing and we're saying spirit will communicate and it'll give us all of these things, that's a great example of something spirit's asking us to do that it's not like it can be something like that. It can be those little simple little breadcrumbs of things to do and
mm,
reminders and just ways to communicate. or it could be very complex things where they, they will show you a past life, and suddenly this relationship with this person makes complete sense, and you're getting it, like you're understanding these things. So it can be these like huge things, and it can just be little things like helping you ground in nature along your, so it's
Yeah. Something I would add to that as well is like, so this is also like the tree situation is a great example of spirit telling us to do something and us taking action. Because that action, even though it's so simple, right? Okay, go sit under a tree, that is integrating also the journeys, because that's something very important that Dana and I have learned is like, so we sit down, we open the circle, we do the journey, we let spirit in, we let them talk, and send us what we need to hear, and then we close the circle, but we don't stop there. We take that journey and those messages and we integrate it, because if you don't integrate it, the whole thing is pointless. I mean, like, it's not going to be true healing.
It's like watching a movie and then being like, I don't know what I just watched. I don't, cool. Why do you spend the time watching a movie if you don't remember what it's about or something,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like integration, and we do something called love replenishing. And those are two very important aspects of us doing these journeys, because yeah, we realized like we took that, like, let's say hour and a half journey, but yeah, we you have to integrate, because that's not only how your mind can process it, but how your body can process, and the body needs to heal, you
Oh,
know.
absolutely. Yeah, it's such a physical experience too. When you're really into it, it is like your body's along on that ride. So,
Mm-hmm.
like you really
For
do
better or
have to.
for worse.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it could start off as soon as we close the circle, or spend some time like reflecting on key points, right? And like, surprises or all whatever, and really, really talking about it and just kind of like analyzing it. And then, what is that integration? It might start in the dreams that night, right? Or in the shower.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes, yeah, when you're taking a shower, there's so much that everything comes to me in a shower. But yeah, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
then it's like the synchronicities the next few days, it's like that
Mm-hmm.
post someone sent you on Instagram. It's that like
Yeah.
podcast you listen to, that conversation you
Mm-hmm.
find yourself having, that movie that you watch. It's like, it's all of
Mm-hmm.
these ways it pops in,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's the things that happen to you in your life, like the sort of just events that you find. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it's just such a beautiful journey, and I think after all these years, like, we finally, we've seen, we can look back now and we can see, okay, from day one till now, how did that go? And it's just like, I'm not the same person, and I don't think you are
No.
either.
Mm-mm.
you know
Mm-mm.
and for the better. I mean, it's not easy. It's definitely not an easy journey. It can be very triggering, very tiring, but
Mm-hmm.
having that commitment, because knowing that it's something positive, that it's really a huge form of self-care,
Oh, it's huge, and it can be a catalyst to get you out of a rut or a stuck space, or just a way of
Mm-hmm.
thinking that just isn't serving you. It just, it just isn't serving you anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and when you do this work, like, that shift where you were saying some things happen for you and not to you, and, all of the sort of things that start to transform, jobs that aren't serving you, relationships that aren't serving you,
Mm-hmm.
friendships that aren't serving you, um, you
Mm-hmm.
can watch those things go and come to you. Like, you might
Mm-hmm.
lose something, but then you get this amazing thing in balance for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you find you can let things go that aren't working in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
And also I think like for me personally, I've had this experience where like it's like that saying like if what is it? I don't know, if you set a bird free or something, if it comes back to you, it's yours, and
Mm-hmm.
also having the trust that because that's happened to me a few times, like really letting go of something because it wasn't serving me in the moment, but then it comes back later and it's even more beautiful,
Yeah,
you know, and just
absolutely.
trusting that that's what's needed.
And it also teaches you you really truly don't own anything in this world.
Hmm.
Like you don't, you know. The only thing you
Hmm.
own is how you're going to react to something.
Hmm.
And you can own your connection
Like,
to spirit with intent, right? Or your connection to healing
hmm.
with intent, you know, but
Hmm.
um
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Hmm. Well, yeah, we covered a lot.
We did. And you know, and I think that something that's important too with this is that, like we do with our journeys, you know, we'll do them and then we'll listen to them again to really get
Hmm.
everything, because we record everything. So we listen to them
Yes.
again. So we
Hmm.
record journeys that the two of us do. We record the group journeys that we do every month. We record our client sessions so our clients have the journey for themselves.
Hmm.
And we record these talks too and then put them up on our Instagram page, and also on a YouTube channel. So I
Hmm.
did that actually when I was cooking. Our last talk was about what was it? The protection one. Was that the one we did
Hmm.
last time?
Yeah.
I was listening to that while I was like doing dishes and cooking and stuff,
Hmm.
and I was like, oh, you know, like it was
Hmm.
interesting to even hear that again, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I hadn't been doing that. I've been listening to everything else, but not the actual talks again. I was like, oh, like what are
Hmm.
we saying, you know?
Yeah.
It was pretty good.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I think, it's important, like, especially for the journeys, because like when you are in it, it's like you're really coming out of body,
Mhm.
to whatever degree it is, sometimes light, sometimes really intense. And yeah, the recording allows us to, like, for us and for clients to go back and listen and really absorb it better and hear things that maybe we missed, or make sense of it a little deeper. Um,
Yeah.
mhm,
It's part of the integration is what it
mhm,
is, I think, you know,
yeah,
for sure.
mhm,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
It's
absolutely.
mm, well, yeah, wow. Well, we covered a lot. um,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, this has been, a few years journey for us, and we're so excited, to be doing
Mhm.
it for other people and taking them on this journey and teaching them, not only how to connect to spirit, but how to understand the messages they're getting and integrate it and everything. Because yeah,
Yeah.
like we said, it's been such a transformation for us,
Mhm.
and we know it's going to be beautiful for other people. So yeah, we're happy to be doing it.
Absolutely. Um, yeah. Yeah. What was that we talked about finding our purpose, and this is one of our purposes, you know, like for sure, you know,
Hmm.
connecting
Yeah.
people with the messages of spirit, you know, the
Hmm.
healing, you know, the transformation, the integration. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I think with that being said, if anyone's interested in working with us in this way, yeah, feel free to
Yeah.
comment, to reach out, to book a session. All of that is on our Instagram page, on
Mhm.
our YouTube page. We're going to be working on something really exciting for everyone soon, and
Mhm.
yeah, but don't hesitate. If any
Yeah.
questions or you know.
Absolutely. We have a few things coming up this month too. We have our fall
Mm-hmm.
equinox. We have our free meetup journey on the 14th, Saturday the 14th, right? Then we
Mm-hmm.
have on the actual fall equinox, we have a cacao ceremony, which I'm
Mm-hmm.
really excited about. Um, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and just lots of things coming up down the pipeline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, if anyone's interested, yeah, in a session or any of the ceremonies, um, feel free to go to our Instagram or meetup and everything and see what we got going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm,
Cool. Well, thank
yeah,
you. Thank you for taking the
yeah,
time to talk about this, you know.
hmm yeah, you too. It was nice. Good conversation as always.
As always.
Hmm. All right. Well, have a good night, everyone, and we will see you on our next live.
Okay, good night. Bye.
Bye.